Howdy, y'all. My name is Ryan Finglass, and welcome to the Between the Bears and the Bulls podcast. Today, we've got Christopher on, our founder. We're excited to share his story in founding Beavers Wealth Management. We appreciate you taking the time today. We're excited to share Christopher's story with you. Enjoy the show. All right, man. Welcome to Between the Bears and the Bulls. How are we doing today?
Doing awesome, man. I'm excited to be here. This is, and we've been talking about doing this for a long time. This is fun.
This has been a dream come true, for so to speak. I think it's been really cool to see this. This is now our second episode of doing this.
Yep.
First one of just you and I together, but it's been a thought and a dream for us and the team for such a long time that it's cool to finally get all the pieces in place to have these conversations. So
yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you look sharp. Tell me about these cufflinks you got on today.
What do I got on here today? Oh, are these the TCB? Okay, you know what this is?
I don't. What is it?
Okay, so this is actually Elvis's motto.
Okay.
So you know Elvis Presley.
I know Elvis.
Okay, you know Elvis. Elvis's motto, TCB, taking care of business.
Awesome.
And so, I thought it was a pretty cool motto, especially for today. We'll take care of business on this podcast. But yeah, those are my my Elvis cufflinks.
Awesome, man. Well, let's take care of some business today. Today's a special episode. We get to talk about your founder's journey, start to finish, where your career began, and even going before that. What were some of the things that kind of led you along this path to becoming a wealth advisor? So today, let's go through that. So where's your story start? I know we've been together now for the past, almost 5 years.
Yeah.
So I know how the tail end of this story is up at least until this point in time, but where does it all begin for you?
So I'm actually from Corpus Christi. A lot of people think I'm from DFW and that I've always been here. So South Texas, do you know where Corpus is?
Of course, it's the home of Whataburger.
Yeah,
man.
there we go. It is the home of Whataburger, home of Selena. That's exactly right. So right there on the Gulf Coast. So I grew up in Corpus Christi. My dad was actually a CPA. And so obviously a lot of people know that and clients know that, but he had a CPA practice down there for almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up in Corpus Christi. Mom was a accountant as well, but stay-at-home mom once myself and my sister were born. And so, yeah, I had a great, opportunity and childhood down there in Corpus. And what was interesting too is obviously kind of my background before I was ever considering doing investments, I was really into music.
Yeah.
Right? So music was,
tell by Elvis
not just the
yeah.
Elvis side of things, but I grew up and actually had a piano teacher that was there in Corpus, and I studied classical piano music.
Okay.
And so what was interesting is I actually was thinking about doing the music side of things as a career path for a while. So I competed, did that all the way through high school, had the opportunity to play in Carnegie Hall a couple of times, which was pretty cool.
That's awesome,
and so it's a big passion of mine, but grew up in Corpus, and of all places, so she was a Polish teacher down there in Corpus Christi. And so really kind of interesting, and I owe a lot of my discipline and other type of things that I utilize even today from music, actually.
Yeah,
so.
I think that's really cool. I actually just got done rereading a book. It's called Make Something Wonderful.
Okay.
And it's interesting because it's not a officially published book, but it was released to a few Apple employees and Pixar employees after Steve Jobs had passed. And basically this book was a collection of quotes, emails, speeches, basically anything that Steve created throughout his life that was on paper, they put and compiled into this book.
That's interesting.
And because he was a big investor in Pixar and obviously his history with Apple, they gave it to a few Apple employees and Pixar employees after he passed. So I read it. It's a collector's item. If you go on eBay, you got to pay an astronomical amount to get a copy of this book. But I'm a big Apple fan, so I wanted to read it. And one of the things that stands out to me after reading that is a quote that he had in a speech. I can't remember if it was when he gave his Stanford commencement speech. Mm-hmm. But somewhere along those lines, he said something that really stood out to me, and it was, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. So it's interesting to hear that piano in your early years has some connection to what you do today.
Yeah.
But I got to ask the question. So my background's in sports, but I've always loved music.
Yeah.
What is it like to compete in a competitive piano contest?
Man, I got to tell you, it is, people say all the time now, they go, their greatest fear. I think it's like the number one greatest fear is going out and speaking in public, right?
Yeah.
And so I've got to tell you, I've never had an issue speaking in public, I guess because I was used to performing on a stage where it's just you and the piano. And I've got to tell you, there's nothing more kind of nerve-wracking than being up there and every single note that you're getting ready to play is being listened to, right? And there's nothing else that's around you that can basically save you. And there's a right and a wrong note. It's not like jazz, right? Where you can go and you make a few mistakes and that's all a part of the music. With classical music, it's very precise. And so, you hear every mistake. And so I got to tell you, I think that really helped in my career as, I've done some of the public speaking and other things of that nature. And it's like having that background in music has definitely helped me because I'll tell you, I don't think there's anything more nerve-wracking, as I said, than those moments and competing in those high pressure situations.
So if you connect the dots, piano taught you to have nerves of steel.
There
which
we
is
go.
necessary when making trades, right?
That's exactly right. I didn't even think about it that way. It's a good way of connecting the dots, but I didn't even think about it that way. But you're exactly right. And so, obviously music's still a big part of my my life, and I think you know this, but I'm on the board of the Clyburn here in Fort Worth, which is an international piano competition.
Right.
Every 4 years they do this. I think it was like 50 million people watched the podcast worldwide in the last competition. So this is a huge deal.
Yeah, it's like the Olympics for piano
exactly
competition,
what it is,
right?
And so it is, it's pretty special. And Emma and I are actually hosting another contestant this coming year. So in 2025, we're going to be seeing the next Clyburn piano competition, which will be a lot of fun. So they'll stay with us for a month and practice, in our home. And it's so much fun. So we're pumped.
That's cool, man. I think with piano and other disciplines that you learn as a child, like we talked about, there is a parallel that you see in your professional career. But I want to talk a little bit about, because I know you had some history at Harvard, and I've heard these stories that you were there with Mark Zuckerberg and people like that. But what was that experience like, going through Harvard and getting your undergraduate degree at Harvard?
I'll tell you, man, having grown up in Corpus Christi, right, South Texas, and then going off to the East Coast, obviously complete different culture, right? Which honestly was, looking back on it, I mean, I think it really helped and develop who I am today, right? Because I got to see a whole different side of the world and culture that has helped me kind of in my view of the world, right? And so, man, I had a great time. I think the worst part of it was getting used to the winters. I'd never seen snow. I grew up in Corpus Christi on the coast, right? So we had never seen snow. And the year that I went to Harvard, they had the most cumulative snowfall that winter than ever before in history. I mean, so that was a bit of a culture shock, if you will, was just the weather there. Yeah. But I mean, it was an incredible experience. As you mentioned, I was there during the whole Zuckerberg Facebook experience, and so he was a number of years ahead of me. But a number of people, Vivek Ramaswamy, who's obviously been, you've seen a lot here in the news in the political realm. He was actually lived in the same house that I did, was a year above. And so it's just being around other driven individuals and being around kind of that obviously is something that has influenced in the things that I do, and obviously has been an incredible part of what it is that I do today, honestly. Yeah. And when you got to Harvard, did you know you wanted to go in finance? Yeah. What kind of pushed you in the direction of wealth management as a career choice there? Yeah. So I always knew that I loved being around people. Right. And so I enjoyed communicating with people. I actually did a stint as an investment banking analyst between my junior and senior year. And I thought, because I always had a passion for finance, but really it was the people side of things that I really enjoyed. And so having done the investment banking side of things, I realized that was more of the numbers and the spreadsheets, which I was good at and enjoyed, but it really lacked the interaction with people. Right. And so I had learned a little bit about the financial advising side of the business whenever I was in college. And one of the things that really drew me to this was this ability to get to work with people on a daily basis, and not just get to work with people, but really impact the future lives of people and help them in ways that, you really don't see a lot of professions can do on a daily basis, right? I think a lot of professions, you maybe do things that ultimately help people, but you may not see it firsthand. What was so intriguing to me is being able to help people in a way to where you saw their kids go to college. You saw them be able to achieve, and buy the house that they've always wanted or retire when they were talking about. So it's like the daily, accomplishments that you get to see people go through and you get to kind of be a part of that. I mean, I was always driven to that side of the business. And so I kind of got to merge the two things I was passionate about, right? The markets and investments, which I always had a penchant for, and then obviously the people side of the business. And so, man, I'm so fortunate in the fact that I got into this business right after college and my master's, and I really approached it like it was a career, right? So many people that, it's probably the same for you and a number of your friends. It seems like, I think it's the 10 years after graduating college, you have on average like 6 jobs these days is kind of what you see.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting now is I looked at it as this is the one and only career that I want for the rest of my life. And man, I'm so happy that we're sitting here now talking about it, and obviously so incredibly excited that you've been here with me for 5 years, because now you're getting close to that 10-year mark and you're still, you're still in the same one place.
It's going by a lot faster these days, I'll say.
Exactly.
Time seems to escape me pretty quickly, but I think that's really cool. One of the things that, drew me to this business as well is what you talked about, that connection piece. But I think going into this industry for me, into financial services, especially kind of building your own, carving your own path like what you did, there's an entrepreneurial spirit there.
For sure.
Did you feel that when you first started?
Yeah, it very much is, and you probably know the statistics better than anybody, right? It's, you get into this practice and it's like 5% of people make it, right? It's really hard to kind of break through and make it, because ultimately you come here and you have to have that entrepreneurial sense. Nobody sits there and said, hey, here are your clients, go out. And honestly, at that particular point, having just started off, you're talking to people and you're, wanting them to invest their life savings with you and trust you, even though you don't necessarily have that background to say, hey, here's the experience that I have doing this, right? And so it's a tough industry to kind of crack into, but once you do it, I feel fulfilled every single day. I'm so excited that we get to work with the people that we do, and they entrust us, with what they do. And at the end of the day, I feel like I'm so incredibly lucky. And you see it, obviously, the people we get to work with, we get to work with our friends.
Yeah.
How great is that? No other profession that you can say is that you're directly helping the people you care most about.
Right.
And so it's been a wonderful journey so far, but we're just getting started, man.
Yeah, we definitely are just getting started. But I think going back to what you said earlier, that's the key piece that I think a lot of people don't realize about this industry, is that we're really in the business of building trust.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you this too, because I remember when we were back at a previous firm, I was going through the training program, and one of the head coaches for us, they weren't advisors, they didn't have their own practice, they're just coaches, and they wanted to help get us on the right path. And one of the things that they mentioned that I remember was they said that established advisors, people that have been in the business for a long period of time, they have amnesia, is what the word that they used, as to what it was like going through, your first couple years in this business.
Right, exactly.
So I'm curious to you, is that true? Do you still remember those early days? And if so, what was that like?
Yeah, I try to put myself in that situation every day, to where I approach things where you see it a lot, right? With advisors, you kind of get complacent, and you don't necessarily know what it was like whenever you first started. And I vowed to make sure that I never made that mistake again, because I always wanted to continue to improve. I always wanted to continue to grow. And so the way I look at it is every single day I have to come to work, come to the office, and I have to make sure that the people that have entrusted with us want to continue to be here, right? And so I have to work for them every single day. And so not just the clients we currently have, but new prospective clients that are looking at Beavers Wealth Management. And so my mindset is very much never to have that amnesia, centering myself around people like yourself, helping that. But the idea is we're very fortunate in that we have a very well-established practice now, but I approach it every day like I don't have any clients, right? Or, the clients that we have, every single client is the only client I have. And if you keep that mindset, it keeps you driving. And that's kind of how my mindset has always been, is that I never want to get complacent. I always want to get better. Every single day I've got to prove my worth to what it is that we're doing. And so hopefully that's what we continue to do for clients. And so I'll keep walking in every day, wondering if we're going to where that next relationship is going to kind of come from. And so that's the mindset I have.
Yeah. Let me ask you this too. So when you go back to those early years once more, what was the vision for Beavers Wealth Management at that point in time? Because now it's been almost 2 decades of Beavers Wealth Management. When you're first starting, you still keep a lot of the same kind of core values and things of that nature as to who you are.
Right.
But Beavers Wealth Management early on, what was the vision of starting this company?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously we've done a much better job, I think, here recently, kind of talking a little bit more about, hey, this is actually the way that we want people to understand what we're trying to do, because I know that our vision was probably always the same as what it is here today, but now we have a better way of describing exactly what that is. And our mission statement here is we want to empower and educate the families we serve, right? Beavers Wealth Management is about empowering and educating the families we serve. And I know early on that's what I wanted to do, right? I wanted people to understand that I wanted to take this industry, which for the most part, and you see it, but it's a very difficult to understand industry. There's not as much transparency as there should be. And I wanted to create a space where clients felt very knowledgeable, that they were working with somebody that they knew was very transparent, that they felt educated and empowered by that knowledge. And so early on, I really wanted to implement that with each client that I sat down with. And I really wanted to educate them on what it is that we were doing. And I think that now we have so many different avenues that we can now do that with, right? Because we didn't have podcasts or anything like this when I first started. And so I think now being able to offer those different educational side of things that we provide, whether it be podcasts, whether it's our Let's Talk Markets, whether it's our market memo or our Beaver Nuggets, things like that, that we now utilize for clients to feel educated and empowered. I think that's always been the goal, but now we just have the resources and ability to be able to perform and basically ultimately kind of have a period of time to say, this is what we're ultimately getting towards. So it's always been about the client, right? Every single day we come here to serve those people. And, we're so fortunate that those people are, as you know, some of our best friends. And so that's always been kind of the vision, but we'll continue that way.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things too that our clients start to learn about us as our relationships grow over the years is some of the different places that we pull inspiration from to build Beavers Wealth Management into the vision that we have. And one of my favorite examples is Disney.
Yes,
Disney is, I know, holds a special place in your heart.
No doubt.
So tell me, and I don't really know where it started. Where did your passion for Disney, and how did you ultimately take some of those ideas that Disney, they're the best at parks, they're the best at creating this environment. Where did all that come from?
So I think I probably inherited this from my dad. And so my dad started us, and we were, we went to Disney as kids, right? Went to the parks a couple of times. That was always, if we were going to do a vacation anywhere, if we could convince mom and dad to take us to Disney. And they didn't really need a whole lot of convincing because my dad was a big Disney fan or buff. We got the opportunity to experience that. And one of the things that I realized early on about Disney is it's not just the parks. It's not just about the movies. It's about the quality. And I think that was always the key that I saw was you go there and it was the way Disney made you feel, right? It was the experience. It was the service. It was all the other stuff. It was the magic, right? I mean, I think they use the word magic and you kind of hear that and you roll your eyes, but there really is something special about it when you go there and you feel like you're just in a different place. And it's all of the people are ultimately what make the magic. And honestly, I think that's probably what happened during the pandemic when there's been so many issues with, people's experiences in the park is that they changed a lot of personnel within the parks and really the people create the magic. And because of that, it changed the way people kind of viewed some of that experience. And so I loved early on when I thought about how I wanted to build Beavers Wealth Management, we talked a lot about creating this Disney-like service, right? Creating that magic, those wows, that opportunity for people to go back and say, okay, wow, Christopher and Ryan are providing more than just financial services, right? They're providing experience, a peace of mind of what we're doing. And so I very much took that and looked at what they were doing from when you come in and, we've got, things like Stanley, right? Stanley, which, I think probably a number of
warm
people.
nuts, welcome signs.
That's right, exactly
Things like that.
Things like that are just the little difference and nuance
Yeah.
that make people feel like this is a part of a family, right? And I
Right.
think that that's what Disney does so well, is they make you feel a part of this family. And obviously that's what I hope for Beavers Wealth Management, is that every client here feels like they're a part of our extended family.
Yeah. And another part too, the journey of Beavers Wealth Management, being a family, you got to go through tough times together as a family
Absolutely.
too. So talk to me a little bit about what were some of those tough times and how did you navigate those challenges throughout the last almost 2 decades?
Yeah, I mean,
What stands out?
It's been a wild ride. I mean, obviously when I started, it was just myself,
Right.
And so I was a sole practitioner for, almost 6-7 years. And then I realized I was calling my dad so much, with him being a CPA, and would ask him questions, and I'd say, hey, can I get your input and advice on this, as we were looking at different estate planning type things. And I realized, I go, you know what, Dad, you'd be a perfect advisor, right? And this would add something unique, because there's not a lot of advisory teams that I know that have a CPA, right? And even though, as you know, we don't provide tax, advice, and we don't file tax returns, just having somebody who spent their entire life looking at things from a financial planning and estate planning perspective, I mean, that's pretty valuable, right? It's invaluable. And so, brought my dad into the business, but you realize at that particular point, it's like I brought him into the business, and I did it with the anticipation that we were going to continue to grow. But it's one thing to say, okay, myself without a family at this particular point, building a practice and a business. It's another thing to convince my dad, who had a successful CPA practice of 30 years, to sell his practice, move up here, ask him to get licensed. I mean, he's joked around and said he hadn't studied since the CPA exam, and he had to study the Series 7 and 66. I mean, he took a huge risk to come up here, and we both did. I mean, at that particular point. And so, but I really believed in what we were trying to create. And I said, Dad, if you come aboard, I know that we can continue to grow this business in such a way to where we're going to continue to add value to our clients. And if you continue to add value and do the right things by people, then you're going to grow in the right way. And that's really what we have done. And so obviously brought in my dad, and then we kind of still continue to grow from there. And,
you don't see that a lot. Most times you see, especially in our industry in financial services, fathers or mothers hiring their, either their daughter or their son to kind of take over the business once they retire. It's different what you did there, where you had to ask your dad, hey, come work for me.
And
how'd that I'm just curious, how did that go down? How'd that conversation go down?
So it's funny. So I realized in my parents' household, if I want anything to definitely get done, I got to go through my mom, right? Okay, so that's how I knew. So I talked to my mom, and I convinced her. I said, look, you definitely want to move up to Fort Worth. You're going to enjoy it so much. And I convinced her before I even talked to my dad about coming to move up here. So this is no joke. He comes home one day from the office after I've kind of done this, that behind the back, talk to my mom.
How long did you think about this before you asked him?
So we had probably.
Did you catch him off guard when you asked him, or did he kind of like know that maybe this was something that Christopher had asked?
No, I think he was caught. He wasn't necessarily caught off guard by when I talked to him. He was caught off by guard by this. So he walks in from work in Corpus, and my mom has literal boxes and packing boxes. And my dad goes, what are you doing? And my mom says, well, we're moving to Fort Worth. And my dad says, well, I'm not retiring. I can't retire. I'm not in a position that I even want to retire. And she goes, no, you're not going to be retiring. You're going to work on Christopher's team. And so then we obviously had the discussion. And so, once he came home and saw the boxes packed, it was a done deal,
Man.
So I had to sell my mom on the deal. And then once I sold her, then it was, getting him across the finish line wasn't as difficult. But in all seriousness, I mean, he enjoyed, obviously, when we would discuss things, and he realized that, the opportunity to get to work together. I think, what he says now, and I think it's, it's pretty special, but he's like, any parent would love to get to have the opportunity to get to work with, their son or daughter in a situation to where, it's fun to get to come to work. And we obviously have a great relationship. You see it, our clients see it, but it's a special relationship, and he has an incredible, value to clients, because he's an expert in things that I'm just not an expert in. And there's nothing wrong with me saying that. I think learning that early on, when you're a sole practitioner, you feel like you have to be the expert in everything, because you don't ever want to tell somebody that you don't know. Because if you
Right.
say you don't know and you're just newer into the business, you start to wonder whether people are taking you serious or can take you serious.
Mhm.
And what was great was being able to say, hey, you know what, I'm not the expert when it comes to, estate planning, but I have somebody that's been doing it for 30 years. Let me consult my dad. And now that he's a part of the team, adds an incredible amount of value. And that's why he, along with yourself, do so much of the financial planning and estate planning, giving y'all's backgrounds, and are so incredibly good at doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. He is, God, I wish I could think of an analogy for Matt, but he knows anything and everything, and he drops. I know almost every 2 weeks I'm going to get my update on the latest tax policy on the
keeps
Blue
up with all that
Kiplinger.
stuff.
Yeah, he still reads it every time they publish it.
And I actually think he enjoys it. I know he enjoys it.
Yeah, he does.
And what's crazy is we always joke around, because, and he'll say it, as a CPA, he's allowed to say it, but I would say that my dad's unusual from a standpoint that he has a incredibly outgoing personality for a CPA. I'll just say that, and he'll be the first one to tell you that he enjoys being around people.
I was going to ask, because both parents with the background being in accounting, and then you, nerves of steel, not afraid to go up and play the piano in front of everybody.
Right.
I was like, which side of your family are you getting that from?
It's funny. I would actually say that my mom is probably more of the outgoing person than my dad, even though if you'd meet my dad, you'd think that he's the outgoing one. But I probably get more of that from my mom. My mom is not afraid to go up to any person and start talking to them. And so I probably have that mindset from her.
Yeah. I think it's really cool, especially whenever you talk about bringing families into the business. And it's something that's unique to us here at Beavers Wealth Management. But another thing I wanted to ask you, my journey with running. It's been a big part of my life over the past couple of years, but you're a big runner yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
I always look back at running and think there's a lot of parallels between focusing in on a plan, attacking that plan, and seeing the progress that you make from point A to point B, right?
Yeah.
What do you draw from running? Is there anything that you take in, or maybe even it's not running, maybe it's piano, maybe it's something else? Is there other areas that you draw not only inspiration from, but lessons?
Right. Yeah.
Lessons that you can then apply to your professional career.
It's a great point, and I think that there are a ton from running. So I always loved athletics, right? I love sports, I love athletics, but personally, I wasn't gifted with any. Unlike yourself, right? I wasn't gifted with any type of athletic ability, right? But I would actually tell you that running is one of the few sports, if you will, that you don't necessarily have to be gifted athletically to be good at it, because it's a mind sport, in my opinion, right? It's a mind sport it's so much about discipline.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons I got into running, and this was probably, it's newer, right? 8 or 9 years ago. It's not like I've been running for my entire life. I got into running because a couple of things. I love food. And so I realized if I was going to continue
it's a big motivation for a lot of people.
It's a big motivation for me. I don't necessarily love to run, but I love to eat. But I realized from a discipline standpoint that I was like, okay, if I continue to add these miles, or if I run, I can kind of continue to eat what I want to, which is, where I get a lot of enjoyment. But the thing that I get from, running and how it applies to business is that it very much is a disciplined type of sport, which right? You have a schedule of when it is that you're going to run, how much you're going to run, the paces that you're going to run, and that you kind of go up to. And the idea is you utilize running as an opportunity to say, okay, it's just another structured part of my life. And if you think about what we do, we have to be very disciplined and structured as a financial advisor, right? Because if you don't have a process and a plan, it's very hard to be successful for your clients. And I think that I see a lot of that in our industry, where unfortunately you don't necessarily find advisors have a set process and plan, which can be difficult, right? The great ones do, and a lot of them don't. And at least with running, it's very much a disciplined, plan-oriented type sport. And so, and you've obviously, and I know you probably want to throw it in here. I know this last year.
I got to put it on record. I got the fastest marathon time in the office.
Fastest marathon time in the office, but
you're right.
I still hold the fastest half marathon time in the office. All right, so
that's
I know
okay. We can both be first place.
Yeah, okay,
in one
there
of
we
those.
go. There we go.
But yeah, I think running for me has been one of those things that it's painful.
Yeah.
You got to get past those first few I guess months maybe in marathon training
right.
to get past the point where it's not just pain, but I can kind of tolerate it. And then you see yourself get better and better and better. And I think that applies to so many different things. And like you said, when it comes to financial planning, that's where I probably see the greatest overlap between running and what we do on a daily basis. Following a plan, I mean, truly, if you don't, I can't remember who said this quote, but if you don't have a plan, you don't know where you're going. Right? There's no destination. There's no end point. So how can you plan for that destination if you don't have steps to get there? And so I think when we look at, things that really kind of shape Beavers Wealth Management, that is a core foundational piece to what we do is financial planning. But I think that's really cool, man. Running, you have to get back out there and try and. I need you to get back out there and compete with me on that time.
I think my marathon days are over. I'll keep doing the halves, but the marathon days are probably behind me. But I will say, with Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all that, I'm gonna have to up my miles because I plan on upping the food intake here the next couple months. So.
Yeah. Is there anything else when you look back over the last, not going before Beavers Wealth Management, but just over the last, like I said, it's been almost 2 decades of Beavers Wealth Management. Anything else that stands out that when you kind of take the time to reflect a little bit, is there anything that's still stayed the same? Anything that's changed?
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting about this business is that I feel like one of the things that I've tried to do for Beavers Wealth Management here recently is kind of push financial advising into the future, right? Or at least with Beavers Wealth Management, because it seems like to me that this industry, it's easy to kind of get lost in the way that things were done in the past, right? And so it kind of has that feel, the industry does. And so it's like, okay, how can we adjust and change to put Beavers Wealth Management into the future? And I think back in the day, you saw things that were brokers, right? Financial advisors were brokers. And then that kind of evolved into financial advisors and then financial planners. And I really think it's more of kind of financial therapists now. And, one of the things that I know that we've pushed is this idea of education, right? And doing things like this, where it's like, okay, I know the people that I work with in a different way than what you would your typical broker or financial advisor or financial planner before, right? Because that's the kind of relationship that we're trying to create with clients. And so my goal is to constantly push us into feeling uncomfortable, right? And I think this, everybody on the team does. It's like we never want to get lax with, things are good and we're not going to implement or try something new, right? And so I want to continue to grow and continue to build those close relationships that we have with clients. And we've gotten this way because we've taken feedback from people and we've asked and we solicit that all the time. Hey, what can we do better for you? Or what more would you like to see from your financial therapist relationship, right? Those type of questions ultimately help us in creating podcasts like this, which we heard from people, hey, I'm not necessarily reading my content anymore. I'm listening to podcasts, right? I mean, that's kind of the future. And if you're not necessarily doing that for clients, they're going to look elsewhere, right? That's how they want to digest information. And so a ton has changed since I started. Obviously, when I started, there was still a lot of brokers who were doing things on a commission-based, advising side. And I started my entire career and wanted to be a fiduciary. And so I started my practice in that way. And then it's just funny now because now everybody talks, that's the buzzword that everybody talks about, fiduciary and what that means and, are you one and all that type of stuff. And so it's interesting to see. And I think it's validating when you look back and you say, okay, that's something we implemented from the beginning. And it's now, 15 years and we're talking about how that's on the forefront of everybody's minds. And it's like, oh yeah, we've been doing that for the last decade. Now we're on to we're way on to the next thing. We're on to kind of the future. And so we'll continue to evolve. We'll continue to change to the betterment of our clients, and we'll continue to solicit feedback on what we can do better.
Yeah, and we'll continue to take care of business.
TCB, man. TCB, exactly.
Man, well, this has been it's been a lot of fun to hear some of the early stories from Beavers Wealth Management. So thanks for taking the time.
Hey, really enjoyed it, Ryan. Appreciate you doing this.
Now we got to get back to work.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go, man.
Do it.
Appreciate it.